there's an official document published by the World Health Organization that lists 55 countries in the world. Rich nations are specifically told not to actively recruit doctors and nurses from any of them. And almost every single one of those countries is losing medical staff to rich nations anyway. Right now, legally, and on purpose. This isn't a video about engineers or software developers moving abroad for a bigger paycheck. You've probably already seen that video. This is about something with a much more direct, measurable cost. When a country loses the doctors and nurses it trained, the people who stay behind get sicker. And some of them die who wouldn't have otherwise. So today we're going to look at three things. Just how unevenly the world's doctors and nurses are really distributed. Why the rule against poaching medical staff barely slows anything down, and whether any country has actually figured out how to turn this around. Here's the baseline number you need. The World Health Organization says a country needs roughly 1 doctor, nurse, or midwife for every 200 people just to deliver basic, decent healthcare. That's the global median. Anything meaningfully below it, and preventable deaths start climbing. In Malawi, the real ratio today is 1 doctor for roughly every 18,500 people. In Zimbabwe, 1 for about every 7,300. In Ghana, 1 for every 3,700. In Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, 1 doctor for every 2,600 people. Now compare that to where a lot of those same doctors end up. Germany, 1 doctor for roughly every 220 people. The United States, 1 for every 270. The United Kingdom, 1 for every 300. That's not a small gap. That's some of these countries operating with somewhere between 60 and 90 times fewer doctors per person than the countries their own graduates are moving to. And it's not just doctors. Nurses and midwives follow almost the exact same pattern. Malawi has about 1 nurse for every 2,000 people. The United States has roughly 1 for every 75. This is exactly the gap the WHO's list is trying to protect. 55 countries, selected specifically because their health workforce is already below that global minimum and their broader healthcare coverage is struggling too. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. The WHO list isn't a law. It's not a ban. It's a please don't, a set of safeguards inside something called the Global Code of Practice, which countries voluntarily agreed to follow. There's no fine. No trade sanction. No enforcement body that shows up and stops a hospital in Manchester or Munich from hiring a nurse who trained in Zimbabwe. The entire system runs almost entirely on good faith, and good faith has a funding gap. To understand why the safeguards don't work in practice, look at Nigeria, a country that isn't even fully on the list, but shows the exact same pressure building underneath it. Nigerians have a word for this now, Japa, Yoruba slang that roughly means to flee fast. It used to describe a niche trend among a handful of specialists. Today it's mainstream enough that it shows up in pop songs and comedy sketches. In a nationwide survey of Nigerian doctors, 88% said they were actively considering leaving the country for work. Not dreaming about it, actively looking. On average, roughly 12 Nigerian-trained doctors have been registering to work in the United Kingdom every single week. Why? The reasons doctors gave weren't exotic. Low pay, frequent strikes over unpaid wages, hospitals without reliable electricity or basic supplies. In one recent national budget, out of roughly 8.8 trillion naira in total government spending, only about 3.6% went to healthcare. And here's the line that made this story go viral in Nigeria for the wrong reasons. When asked about the exodus of doctors, one of the country's own labor ministers suggested it wasn't really a crisis. Nigeria, he said, simply trained more doctors than it needed, so exporting the surplus was fine. Try telling that to a rural clinic with one doctor for every 2,600 patients. Nigeria isn't unique. Ghana loses a large share of every graduating medical class within a few years of certification. Zimbabwe went through two separate waves of medical emigration during its worst economic crises in the early 2000s and again after the pandemic. The pattern repeats almost everywhere who put a country on that list. It would be easy to make this the villain part of the video, rich countries as the bad guys, deliberately hunting for doctors in places that can't afford to lose them. The real answer is less dramatic and honestly more uncomfortable. It's just cheaper. Training a single doctor from scratch, through medical school and residency, costs a wealthy country's public health system a genuinely large sum, spread out over roughly a decade before that doctor ever sees a patient alone. Recruiting an already qualified doctor from abroad skips almost all of that. The training cost was paid, just not by the country now benefiting from it. On top of that, most rich countries are aging fast. They need more healthcare workers exactly as fewer of their own citizens are choosing medicine or as their existing workforce retires. A skilled worker visa program that fast-tracks doctors and nurses is, from a purely domestic point of view, one of the most efficient policy levers a government has. So hospitals post the job. Recruitment agencies, some of them for profit, paid for successful hire, go looking in exactly the countries with the largest gap between local pay and what they can offer. The WHO's list was never designed to stop that machine. It was designed to make it feel slightly less comfortable. To be fair, some governments have tried real limits. A handful of destination countries have agreed to formal bilateral deals that include training support or fees paid back to the country of origin. But those agreements currently cover a small fraction of the actual recruitment happening every year. Now here's the twist I promised at the start of this video. There is one country in this story with more doctors per person than any other nation we've looked at today, more than the US, more than Germany, more than the UK. It's Cuba. Roughly one doctor for every 105 people. That's not a typo, that's about twice the density of Germany. Cuba does the exact opposite of what we've described so far. Instead of losing its doctors to brain drain, the government deliberately trains far more than the island needs, and then exports thousands of them on official medical missions to dozens of countries around the world in exchange for money, oil, and political goodwill. It sounds like the answer. It isn't, not entirely. Cuban doctors sent abroad are often paid a small fraction of what the host country pays for their labor, the rest goes to the state. Back home, regular Cubans still deal with medicine shortages and doctors earning wages that push many of them to look for ways out too, the moment they get the chance. So Cuba proves something important. A country absolutely can produce more medical talent than it loses. It just hasn't found a way to do that without controversially exploiting the very doctors it trains. Between lose your doctors and export your doctors on unfair terms, there's a middle path a small number of countries are starting to test. Some medical schools now use bonding agreements. The government pays for your training, and in exchange you commit to working domestically for a fixed number of years before you're free to leave. Ireland, South Africa, and a few Gulf states have all experimented with versions of this. A second approach is direct compensation. Destination countries that recruit heavily from the WHO's list pay into a fund that goes back into training more health workers in the country they recruited from, literally replacing what was taken. It exists on paper inside the WHO's framework. In practice, it's barely funded. The third, and probably the most realistic long-term fix, is the least exciting one: raise pay and fix working conditions enough at home that fewer people want to leave in the first place. Every country that slowed its own brain drain, even partially, did it this way, not by making leaving harder, but by making staying worth it. So back to that document we opened with. 55 countries officially flagged as too fragile to lose more medical staff. And every year, thousands of their doctors and nurses leave anyway, not because anyone broke a law, but because nobody built a system where following the rule costs anything. Until that changes, the list will keep existing exactly the way it does today. A polite request in a world that mostly doesn't have to say yes. If you want to see the full list of 55 countries and the sources behind every number in this video, they're linked in the description. Thanks for watching.